everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of Rinkside. Here with myself and Emma Miskew. How's it going, Emma?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing, Ryan?
Doing awesome. Yeah, no, things are good. Busy at work, busy on the rink. Never a dull moment in youth sports land in my household.
No, I'm sure it's busy right now. I know from my friends with young kids in hockey, it is just crazy right now. All the days, every day.
I know we have my wife's mother coming into town to help take care of the boys, as Christy and I both have some things that are taking us out of town for a couple days. And it's pretty funny to put together a schedule of where they each have to be on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and just how overwhelming it is for someone. You know, you sort of get caught up in it in the moment with young kids. You're in a fog. But when you have to set it out for your parents, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I can only imagine because your kids are a little older too. So there's lots going on.
Yeah. And if you're listening, Linda, we love you. Thank you. So this week, I just want to get right to it. Really happy to have a longtime friend, I'll introduce him as, joining us. And I'll introduce you, Justin, and just have you say hi. And then I want to give a bit of a background because I'm very proud and as a spectator and friend watching your career progress. So anyways, just really happy to have you on today. Justin Sproule, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So Justin and I go way back. I don't know, Justin, geez, I don't know how old we would have been when we first got to know each other. Elementary school days, decades. Yeah. But the reason I say proud is because, Justin, you are a self-made workhorse in the hockey industry, the local hockey industry. You know, you really, I think, cut your teeth just finding jobs, right? Finding ways to get involved with the scouting ranks in the local junior levels, now all the way up to the OHL and NHL levels. You've been involved with the GG's men's hockey team at the youth sports level, the Queens, I believe. Now you've got your hand in the Junior B general manager waters. And I believe you've coached at least as recently as last year with the Ottawa Junior 67's U8 AAA team. So there's nothing within the sport of hockey that seems like you haven't done. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's a passion for me at not a younger age, because I feel older now, but with all this, everything you're bringing up here, but yeah. No, I mean, I started young. I think for me, I just identified this is what I want to do as a career.
Yeah.
I think I'm passionate about it. You know, it's a goal of mine to help players, help kids with the role that I'm in now, but also just in general, just being able to identify talent, but also learning, right? There's a lot of stuff you learn in life, in rinks, anywhere, talking to people, learning stuff every day, right? If you're not learning, you're not getting better, right? And I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway I've done for this. But yeah, it's been... there's been a lot of things within the last, I've probably been scouting now, started about 21 years now. So, started at the bottom and got to work your way up. So
that's great.
What a good message. If you're not learning, you're not getting better. I think that's a good message for just everybody listening.
That's the show.
A good start. That's a good start.
Yeah.
I'm curious, in terms of scouting, how has that landscape changed in the last 20 years? Like you said, you've been doing this for a while, and I feel like there've got to have been a little bit of change over time. What have you seen over the past little bit?
I think there's so much change in the sport of hockey. I mean, Ryan can attest to it now that he's coaching, but I think it's always adapting. You're always evolving. You can't always think 20 years ago. You can't think 10 years ago. You got to kind of adapt to the time. Players are different now than they were 20 years ago. You know, for me, starting... unfortunate I was able to start with Ryan, my first really scouting gig at University of Ottawa, but dealing with older guys, bringing them into university, then going back down to junior ranks, then going down to the NHL draft, then the OHL draft. So you're always you're seeing different talent. You're seeing different age groups. You're dealing with men, you're dealing with kids. But just having the mindset to be able to adapt and learn, right? And, being at this, I can't sit there and say I know everything because I don't. Because, there's times I go to a rink and you talk to a fellow scout and he says something and you kind of never thought about it. And then now you pick up on it. And now you can kind of put that towards evaluating, right? So there's a lot of things. Just make sure you're listening and learning at the end of the day is what it's about.
I'm definitely a little bit naive to this because I didn't grow up in that sporting worlds. Like curling, there's no one scouting. You just notice because there weren't that many of us. It's a bit bigger now, but you just noticed other players playing well and you wanted them to be part of our team. We made our own teams. So at what age would scouting start for kids? Because to me, there's so much physical development, emotional development to come. So at what age you start watching for kids at those ages?
It's like you just mentioned, development right? Some kids are smaller than others. Some kids are bigger than others. Some develop later. Some develop quicker. So again, it's all adjusting and understanding it. I don't think there's an age. I mean, obviously U11, U12, U13, I think to me that's a little young to be scouting and evaluating. But, U14, you're not really scouting. You're just kind of taking an eye and just trying to see the progression, right? Because the aspect of scouting is what you're trying to do is you're trying to project what they could be. And as you just mentioned, trying to project an 11-year-old, 5 years from now, what he's going to be like as a person, as a player, whatever. You can't. So it's hard. But again, it's taking the time and watching, doing your homework, evaluating, and then just continuing to follow. It's a process, right? It goes year to year. It's not just boom, let's watch this kid, he's good, because obviously the next year he could change. And, whether it's training, non-training, that kind of stuff, it's all, comes together at the end, right? So.
Yeah, Justin, I want to ask the question that I always love to hear scouts talk about, and maybe it's predictable, but what are those key things that you look for? Maybe this is like like a trade secret of Justin Sproule, but what are those key things? I think a lot of parents have an idea, right? It's goal scorers. It's like if you're not scoring, you're not going anywhere. But what are the things that scouts watch for time and time again?
I think that the biggest thing is, and when I started this, I've kind of gave myself an idea to what I'm looking for when it came to doing stuff for the University of Ottawa and then moving on to all the other stuff I did. The key thing it comes down to is compete. For us in Kingston, I think most teams in general, even it's Kingston when I was in Hawkesbury with Rick Dorval, it's compete, it's effort. Compete and effort or stuff. I've always said this to everybody. I look at compete and hockey sense are the first two things that I look at in a player and identify. The reason for it is that hockey sense you can teach, and that's something that has kind of been a pet peeve of mine recently, but hockey sense you can teach, but compete you can't, right? Hockey sense, it's you're smart, you get it, you don't compete. It's the effort, it's the willingness. It's in you, right? And some players have it, some players don't. And then you got your skill and their skating, and skill and skating are always stuff you can work on, right? I work at Bloom Hockey Training Center, and we're about development and about shooting and about stick handling and just working on the fine. So it's always stuff you can do. I just think the biggest thing to me is compete. It's effort. And that goes on the ice and off the ice, 100%.
Yeah. I also wonder how much you look into how much of a teammate someone is and how much they help the people around them instead of being an individual out there. So I was recently having a conversation where I was just talking about different NHL captains, and there's some that are not as skilled, but really bring out the best in their teammates. They're pure captains. They are leaders out there. And then there's others that are really good. So they get that captain marker, but they don't help their team. There's a reason their team doesn't win very often, not very often, but win the big games because they're out there as an individual. So how much of that do you factor in? Because I think that's so much more important than I think anyone really talks about.
I think it goes to character. And again, kind of character can coincide with compete in a sense. They all kind of merge together. Character is, again, something that, some people have, some people don't. I think it's something you can always work on, being a leader, whether it's in school, in the community. For us in Kingston, we're looking for community-based, volunteers, guys that are going to represent the town of Kingston, guys that are going to want to go out for community events, but also, be there for signings and autographs and stuff, right? So I think when it comes to the captaincy and leadership, I think everybody's a leader in their own sense. It's just whether or not they're comfortable enough to take it out or bring it out of them, I should say. But it's huge. It's not, for the scouting's perspective, it's kind of like a puzzle. We always say it, there's a puzzle. They're just little pieces here and there that you take away from every player, whether it's on the ice and off the ice. So you're just kind of taking pieces of that and putting it together. And at the end, this is what I project what this person is. But again, character is something that's a huge part of what I look for with other stuff, but also in the teams that I've been working with. It's huge because that's going to go a long way.
How do you assess that, Justin? Because I think people forget sometimes they put a lot of pressure on general managers to create that culture and create success for a team as the front line, but really it's the scouts. It's you guys, and hopefully your Kingston management are listening. But I think a lot of real hockey insiders understand that scouts are down on the ground level assessing these kinds of things. So how do you go about assessing character?
It's the when you get to the minor midget level, so for us in Kingston for the draft, we know these kids are skilled. We know, we can watch them 3, 4, 5 times. We get an idea of who they are as a player. Now it really comes down to trying to identify them, who they are as a person. And that's, and the, we always talk about it, but we're always watching away from the play, right?
Yep.
Is the guy that just turned the puck over, is he coming back hard? Is he, not skating? Body language. That's number one. It's another number one thing. Body language is one thing for sure. I got examples in the past of everything where it's just body language could sink a player real quick. And a lot of these kids nowadays don't understand that. And, so we're picking up the little things, right? And, even for me working at Bloom Hockey Training Center, we have teams that come in, whether it's U15, U16, and I'm seeing how they conduct themselves, right? Are they professional? Are they saying thank you? Are they putting pucks away? Are they just going around like a menace, right? These are just little things that they don't know, but these are things that I kind of have in a memory bank that, goes to the person, goes to the broad that goes talking with the pitcher, right? It's the puzzle piece, right? I think it's hard to identify. I mean, you can tell right away, in a sense, who the leaders are and who guys gravitate to, right? That's another part is, are you, you can be a quiet leader, a vocal leader, but are players gravitating to you for questions, for, you want to get the guys fired up after a game or during a game, sorry. I mean, those are what happens. And that's where I think the character really falls into it.
Is resiliency a part of that? It's a new word I hear a lot more of these days at the higher levels. I think teams and organizations, really whichever sport it is, I think they're looking for resilient athletes, right? Ones that have a strong mental side of the game too. Certainly when you were starting your career as a scout and when I was starting and when you were starting, there was a lot less attention paid to mental resiliency and mental strength. And I wonder if that's thrown in that bucket, Justin. You're talking about character and the ability to sort of calm the waters and just be a dependable teammate, someone that can manage their emotions very well. And I just wonder how much that plays into it these days and if that's on as part of your package of assessments.
It is, because you understand, the minor midget level, especially this year, kids want to get drafted. Right. They all think they're going to get drafted. They all think they're there. So that pressure they put on themselves reflects on their game. Right. So if a guy's putting too much pressure, he hasn't scored in 2 weeks. What am I doing? More mistakes happen, the more you notice. So then you kind of take part. Okay. Is he struggling because he's under pressure? Is he struggling because of this? Right. There's a bunch of, again, little things but resiliency is huge because then it's overcoming. It goes down to the compete. It goes down to the character, right? The willingness to want to get better, the willingness to get better. And, if your team haven't won a game in 10 games, are you still going out there working hard in practice? Are you still working hard in games? Or are you just kind of going through the motions and relaying that 0-10 start, right? That's, again, goes to resiliency, goes to character, all that kind of stuff.
And I think stuff like resiliency and mental toughness, like that can be learned. It's just the willingness of the player to want to learn it. I think like when I was growing up, like my mental toughness wasn't great. I didn't have any of us, we didn't have the resources at the time. If things weren't going well, you kind of spiral and keep declining. And then I got resources and I didn't know how to use them at first, nor was ready to use them. And then all of a sudden it clicked and I just wanted all the information. I wanted all the help I could get to try to battle through those tough moments. But kids at certain ages, you don't know if they're going to be receptive to that. If you give them the resources, it kind of has to come from within. So I can see what you're saying. Like you need to be able to identify whether the athletes that you're scouting will have that ability to, like the character and the willingness to want to get better. Because not everyone's like that. So I could imagine that would be tricky. How much time do you spend watching I'm curious how long it takes to be able to watch kids or teenagers or whoever and be able to assess that, all those things.
You've also got two awesome little boys at home, right?
And I've been fortunate enough. I got a 7 and a 4-year-old. My wife has given me the ability to do this. So that's kudos to her and my kids to allow me to do this.
Well done, Justin.
Yeah. But no, I think it's a long-term process, right? That's why we scout scouting really, you can do 12 months out of a year, to be honest with you, right? Because you can have summer skates where you're watching a kid. I'll go to summer skate of a kid that we're maybe looking at and see how he does in a summer skate. Usually those are fun. Those are kind of with your buddies, but is he competitive? Is he, so again, it's a process. Like I said, the biggest thing is, everybody changes, right? And I think Ryan and I have spoken in the past when it comes to, other sports or taking a break or, giving yourself a couple times off in the off season. Because what happens now is kids are going 12 months out of a year. And in a scout's perspective, I've seen kids at the start of season in September where you're like, wow, this kid's all right. He's there. He's on our list. We like him. I like him. This is what we like. And then you get to January and then he kind of just falls off, right? Because you've seen him hit a wall and you've seen him tired and you've seen him, and that affects his play. And that affects, at the end of the day, but it's not just the biggest thing, but it just, it affects, right? That question, it's hard to answer because you're never going to pinpoint it, right? And again, a lot of this is you're just projecting, right? I've been wrong on so many players in these years. It's crazy, but it's nice when you hit on a couple, but at the end of the day, you're never going to be bang on because, as you know, we're all human beings. We all change. Everything's different, right? So,
Yeah. So Justin, I want your perspective. You're watching these athletes so closely, and I know you're watching hockey, but this idea of sports specialization and how, if you've been doing this for 21 years, surely you've seen a bit of a change in the type of player. And I think you hit on this when you started to say that it's not a static job, right? You're not evaluating talent. The game has changed so much. What are you seeing in terms of the athletes that you're watching? Has sports specialization changed the kind of hockey players that you're seeing? Does that affect things like the ability to stay, fit for 12 months of the year now versus a condensed 8-month season? What are you seeing in the types of athletes that we have these days?
Well, I think nowadays these kids at even U13, how big they are, and just the size, the height, the weight. They're just. Back when I played and you played, Ryan. The guys are big, but not the way they are now, right? So I think there is an emphasis on training because every time you talk to a player, it's always get bigger, get stronger, get faster, right? So there is an emphasis to it, but sometimes, kids can take it to a point where that's all they're focused on and they're taken away of what's going to get them to the next level. And strength and all that stuff is great and it's 100% needed. My biggest thing that I've been talking to a lot of people now, it's the understanding of the game. And I think that's where a lot of these parents, players, coaches, in a certain extent are not showing these kids how to play the game. And, you can do all the training you want. You can lift all you want, get stronger, bigger. But if you can't play the game, that's going to affect whether we like you, whether I like you, want you on my team, vice versa, right? So training for sure is 100% needed. I mean, at some point, we're not the NHL. These kids aren't NHL players, but they take a month, month and a half. Ryan, you can speak for it as a professional.
Yeah. But 13-year-olds train more than I trade at the highest level.
Yeah, I think, again, it's the understanding of the game, and training is great. We need it. The players need it. Everybody needs it, no matter if it's a younger level, older level. But at some point, you need a break. At some point, you need your body to recharge, your mind to recharge, because it's a grind. You guys can speak for it as professional athletes, and for sure for you. There's a point in time when you just have to reset, but it also kind of gives you, I want to get back, right? And gives you that love to get back into the game so where you're not hating. I find nowadays more kids are quitting hockey because of the grind and sports in general too, right?
Yeah, we've talked a lot on this podcast specifically about how sports have become that you have to basically pick one when you're so young and invest all of your energy and training into that one instead of being able to play a few sports, maybe one or two others that help with like other skills and being on other teams, learning new hand-eye movements, but also just not doing one thing from a young age to excess so early. And so that's interesting that you say that, because are any of these athletes that you're scouting, are any of them playing another sport? Because I still think it's so important to have experience playing other sports, even just for a couple months of the year, to break up and actually have a break from your primary. But do you see that anymore? Because I really wish I could just put out a massive PSA about this and be like, just don't overcommit to one, because you don't even know if you're going to like it in a few years. So, and just for learning skills, playing on different teams, different styles, everything.
I think every sport in a sense kind of correlates with each other, right? I use soccer, for example, in hockey, right? Like soccer, you're putting balls into space. When you're running onto it, hockey's the same thing. You're trying to find open space to put pucks to create offense, right? So there's so many different things that I think nowadays these kids are just so focused on that one sport. And, me growing up, obviously I didn't play at a high level, but I was baseball, I was soccer, I was hockey. It was just, I played rugby. It was just, that's what it was. We never thought about it, right? And then eventually when you get to a point when you're going to go somewhere farther, let's say, then sure, you got to pick a sport. But if you're 14 years old, there shouldn't be a need. It should be, play hockey in the winter, get to the springtime, instead of spring hockey, maybe get into baseball or get into soccer. And just kind of, again, it goes back to when you get to August, you're like, I want to play hockey again. especially the younger kids, the love gets back. Whereas if you're doing it 12 months out of the year, eventually these kids just wear out. And then, I speak for the draft perspective. They always say, well, why am I not drafted? I'm the best player on my team. You hit a wall. And unfortunately, your play dictated that you weren't drafted, right? So there's a lot of factors that come into it. But yeah, and to answer your question, I think nowadays it's unfortunate, but kids are just doing that one sport. And I think it's kind of hurting their intelligence when it comes to sports, really. Like I said, going back to the hockey IQ and the hockey sense part of it, right?
That's really fascinating, Justin. You know what? Until you said that, I've never thought about it that way. I've always thought about a lack of being a multi-sport athlete as affecting physical things. But, we really do encourage our players at the U13 level to watch at least, our line is always watch at least one period of hockey on TV, right? To see how the game is actually played.
Well, I think Brian, to echo that, and I think that's the other biggest thing is kids, especially in the hockey side, they're not watching hockey anymore.
No, I know.
Right? TikTok. They're watching YouTube. They're watching TikTok. They're seeing the highlight reel goals of, let's say, McDavid, obviously, but they're not seeing what happened 15 seconds before that, right? And that goes to, again, teaching and understanding to what happened, right? Just because he scored a breakaway, it was beautiful. What did he do to get there before that, right?
Yeah.
And
what did his teammates do to set him up to get that breakaway?
When kids see this, and when kids see this on YouTube and TikTok and everything, they want to do it. Right, as soon as the Zegras had his goal a couple years ago, everybody's trying to do the Zegras. It's like it's not hockey though, right? So that goes down to the minor hockey roots as well.
Yeah, it does. Justin, one thing, we're talking about the physical presence in arenas, watching. Obviously you got to have eyes on kids. What about the statistical sort of AI generative, or not generative, but the AI analytics software out there? So I know you're probably familiar with Huddle and Instat and all these other software platforms out there that generate quite a bit of detailed data now for kids at the minor hockey levels that you're scouting. So, what are some of those? And this is a very specific, sort of more technical question. What are some of the more relevant, pertinent statistics that you're looking for? And I'm going to assume here it's not goals and assists and points. So maybe you can help me drive a message home to my young players here. So what are some of those other numbers and, analytical data that you're looking at?
I mean, a lot of it is, turnovers, right? Where are they happening? Are they consistently happening here, everywhere on the right side of the ice, the left side? Shooting, and that's huge. I mean, everybody. I was talking to one of my players the other day on my junior B team, and he's like, "Oh, I like to shoot," but then when you do the instat and you do the analytics part of it, he was 35% shooting. Like you can shoot all you want, but if you're not hitting the net, defeats the purpose, right?
Yeah.
Whereas we had another player that was 70. I think he was about close to 60-70% of shoot accuracy, right? So, I mean. At the end of the day, it's a part of the scouting now. Obviously, we know that, right? It's not that I'm old school, but it helps, right? The video aspect of it, but it's again watching. I go back to that McDavid example, right? Rewinding it 20 seconds, seeing how this happened, right? They scored a goal. Okay, go back 20 seconds. What could have happened 20 seconds before that? Could have we gotten the puck out? Could you have not? What happened? And it all leads to either good things or bad things. Right? So I think that's where the Instat and Hurdle and those kind of stuff really can help. And I think video is huge.
Yeah. What about, you talked a lot about hockey IQ. For instance, I know when I look at these reports, I'll look at, Corsi's is an interesting one. It paints some picture. It doesn't tell the whole picture. The expected goals category, that's a really interesting one too, I find. I don't know how relevant it is at the older ages. And sorry, Emma, these are like, in the weeds hockey analytics things. But I know people are listening who will be interested in this because they put a lot of stock in some of these reports that they get. And so I put some weight in some of these categories, but I just wondered from your perspective if it was viewed the same by scouts.
It is. I mean, we we have an analytics guy with Kingston, and when we go to the draft, he's phenomenal with it. Where it's we're talking about a player, and it's like, hey, bring up his stats and bring up his analytics, and now you're comparing. All right, he goes to the net more, and this guy goes to the perimeter more.
Right.
D are getting shots through. This D's getting shots through more than the other, right? So it's a huge part again of that puzzle piece that you're trying to identify in every player. We're good at that so that we can identify that the players that we like, and then all of a sudden now we're working with it, right? So it's huge, but at the end of the day, it's the eye test live at a rink, seeing what they do on the ice away from the pucks.
Nice. That's
where you're going to get noticed for sure.
Yeah. And is there, last question on this, Justin, on this topic. I mean, is there a certain amount of scouting being done now by Live Barn and video? Like, are scouts getting lazy, or are there still just as many scouts in the building every night.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you have that option. Unfortunately, some guys have to work, right?
Yeah.
Some scouts have full-time jobs like myself. So it's hard to get to every game.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, with the Instat, with, Live Barn, Flow Hockey, you're able to watch a game, or you can watch 4 games in a night instead of going to the one, right?
Right.
But again, being live, being in person, seeing the whole thing, that becomes your true way of identifying talent. Because again, video can only show so much, right? So there is a part of it, but in-house live action is where everything continues to get evaluated.
Yeah, makes sense.
And
in terms of what advice would you give to young players coming up and to kind of ease their minds a little bit? Like, I think a lot of players probably don't know what a scout's looking for, but they know they're there. They want to impress them, impress you. What advice would you give to young players just in terms of kind of checking those boxes? Like, what are you looking for, and how to play in those situations? Like, you always say, oh, pretend I'm not here, but obviously they can't do that. So what would you say to them?
I think the biggest thing, whether you're younger or older, it's understanding who you are as a player. Ryan is a coach. He has a team. He's identified certain players as this is the type of player we want them to be. We want you to be hardworking, forechecking. We want you to be more skilled. I think what happens now is kids nowadays, again, goes back to pressure. There's so much pressure to score and so much pressure to do the highlights or make a big hit. But at the end of the day, it's what are you doing? It's a TikTok thing I saw the other day where a guy said, 90% of hockey is played without a puck, right? And a lot of these kids don't understand that. They feel they need to score. They have to score. They have to do everything, when it's the little things are going to get you noticed when it comes to a scout's perspective, right?
Yeah.
And that's where, again, it goes back to the compete, goes back to the hard work, the battling. But it's also these kids understanding. We do tryouts in the past, not for Kingston, but in my prior, stuff, even Glengarry now, we have a camp and I know who these players are. And when guys, a stay-at-home defenseman, and he's trying to stick handle through everybody, like, you're not fooling me, right? And what happens is your flaws then become, you literally can't, and then nobody likes you. And then it becomes, all right, you're not on our team now. When the kid's like, well, but so it's understanding. I think the biggest thing for players, and when the coaches are really telling them, it goes back to accountability. I think that's the hugest thing. That's the biggest thing, in my opinion. A lot of players, U13 might be too young for that, but, U15, U14, there has to be accountability with each other. And, and that's where I find, and I'm not going to get into it because it's a touchy subject, but parents tend to, have a different mindset. And I think that affects the players as well, too, right? So
You've set me up, Justin. This is the last thing I wanted to ask you about. I mean, you find good people in sport, and you can always trace it back to great parents. And you have two of the best. You lost your mom way too early, but I have vivid memories of being a young player in Rockland, and both of your parents out to support me and to support any of the high level hockey or any level of hockey going on in the area. Two of the best. And
thank you.
And, I think that it's such a big underrated part of this puzzle that is, high level youth sports and this trajectory up, this uncertain trajectory up the curve. I think it's false to say that parents still don't play a role at the higher levels that you're scouting, but just how much of a role or a factor can they have in their children's, ascension up the ranks? And how do you see it?
Me personally, I think it's huge, right? There's a part of us now where I wouldn't say it's 100%, but there's a part of us now where we're scouting parents more than players. To a certain extent.
Pause there for a minute. It cannot underestimate and undervalue the statement you just made. I think if anyone listens to this entire podcast for 2 years, it's the statement you just made.
Well,
anyways, go on.
I just think it's huge because it goes back to Emma, your question about the kind of player you are, right? And at the end of the day, when you're playing at the next level and the next level, you're sitting in a role, and this is what they tell you are. And parents have to identify that. And parents have to be okay with that, right? I know parents, and I think a lot of parents put pressure on kids nowadays, right? Because there's that expectation that it's my draft year, I got to get drafted, so I got to do everything I can. And then what happens when the kid faces adversity, he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And he's stuck. And how do I get out of it? Right. Yeah. And that's where it becomes, a lot of it is you're just, it's not the crazy parents, but it's the yelling in the stands. It's the, we have, I've seen parents that are doing sign language in the stands, the players, and again, these are, as a scout's perspective, it's something small as that, but that could affect, again, part of the puzzle. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because when he gets to the next level, if he's playing in the OHL, you're not looking in the stands for mom and dad, to give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down, right? Like, so I think that's where, I think at a young age, I think we have to start, understanding that and having parents do that, right? And understanding what, not even scouts. I just think it goes back to work too. It goes back to life, right? Everything is kind of given to these kids sometimes nowadays, unfortunately. And it's hard for them to kind of figure out what hard work is, right? And that's where it goes back to the compete and what we look for, right?
Yeah. And I think, like we've talked about it so much, that parents have such a big part of their children's development. And when it comes to athletic development, even more so, and having someone constantly in your ear that is saying messages or relaying information that's not helpful can only be detrimental to future performance. So that makes a ton of sense. I've said since we started this podcast, Ryan, I've been saying parents need to chill out. Like it's just be supportive, provide information when it's helpful, provide resources that are helpful, but stop trying to make your child into the next Connor McDavid by saying things in their ear constantly, because it's not helpful, and it actually can be pretty detrimental to it in various ways to how they treat their teammates, whether they're kind of scared to go out there and perform poorly, or whether they just think they're the best one on the team without putting any effort in. Like, there's so many bad things.
Yeah. Well, Justin, so I want to give you a shout out. You've alluded to it. You're at Bloom now. You're starting up this advisory side of your business, as if you didn't do enough. Family advisory services, a fancy word for agent on the side. And I can't think of anyone better to be doing this kind of thing and helping support the young hockey players in this region. I know you and Rick over at Bloom are, I think you look at yourselves as like a friendly face to go to develop many different aspects of your game. So congratulations to that, you and Rick and the whole team over there. Our team, both of my boys have been in there with their teams and rave about it. I did make them pick up all the pucks, by the way.
I appreciate that.
Put them all back in the piles they found them in. So yeah, thank you so much. We could have done a few hours here with you, and I think people would be glued to their listening devices. So thank you so much for being on Rinkside today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, thanks, Justin. And, guests like Justin keep coming back, giving us great content, and couldn't be happier to watch you grow, Justin, and keep growing your career. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Justin.
You're a big role model for me.
Thanks, Justin.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, that was, 30 plus minutes of really, really engaging, fun stuff with Justin Sproule, currently with Bloom Hockey as a family advisor and I believe manager of the facility, and active scout with Kingston Frontenacs in the OHL, U Sports, now GM with Glengarry in the Eastern Ontario Junior League. So really, really fun, Emma, to get some perspectives about what the people in the stands are really looking for.
Yeah, and I think it's something where you see the scout, and it's probably the same for parents or for the kids. You see a scout and you are like, oh gosh, and I have to perform. Yeah, like he said, like defensemen kind of trying to take the puck through the whole line up, not doing their job, but just want to show off and that sort of thing. But that's actually not at all what they are looking for. They're not looking for someone to just go and take the puck and make their way through the whole lineup. They're looking for more than that. And I think that's just important for everyone to know, that it's the whole picture as an athlete. It's not just your exact stats, and it's not just your performance while they're watching for that brief moment. It's the whole picture and what you bring as an athlete and a teammate to your team.
Yeah, you're bang on. And it was interesting to hear him say too that, they'll occasionally pop out and check out these summer skates. And I think in this really competitive world, no matter if it's hockey or baseball or tennis, it's this concept that they're always watching, right? You never know when somebody's watching, and it's not what you do when the lights are the brightest. It's what you do in the shadows, and how you approach training, how you treat others, how you treat teammates. As Justin said, do you open a door at the rink? Do you know what kind of person are you? Because as you climb the ranks and the margins get thinner and thinner between talent, it's what are these other things that you bring to an organization and to your teammates. So it was really cool to hear him actually say that out loud. And in particular, say that, it's just as much about scouting kids as it is the parents. So
yeah.
Pay attention.
And then I believe that in its entirety. Like we've said, just being a supportive parent, as much as it's hard or not in your nature, is just definitely the way to go.
Yeah.
You're going to get the best out of your kid, and you're going to build a really positive, athletic, and like their life growing up, just that openness and stuff and that support, because they're always going to do their best or they're not really interested in the sport. And either way, it should be their choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, always fun, Emma, with you. And again, thanks to Justin. And that's a wrap for episode 3 now, I think, of season 2. They're flying by. So
yeah, we're right into it. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll be back with more sports related content in the probably next week.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everybody.